Hi everyone, I'm Kelly, and I apologize ahead of time for my voice. I've been struggling with laryngitis since this past weekend, and it's just now starting to come back, so excuse the tone likeness. Alright, well, to start out with, I wanted to give you an idea of my ancestral history that dates back a lot farther than just my nuclear family and my grandparents. We have we come from all over Europe, my family. I know we have some English heritage, Irish, Scottish, German, Italian, and that's about as far as I know. But the most prominent that I grew up with was Italian. My grandfather felt it was very important for family traditions. It was a joke in our family that he didn't believe there was any other blood in his body but Italian. He actually had his dual citizenship, and my two uncles have their dual citizenships to Italy. We still have some distant family there as well. So, growing up with such an Italian-centered extended family on my maternal side, there was definitely some ethnocentric monoculturalism. There were some biases against the way families do things. I think my grandfather especially thought his traditions were the best traditions. He was very centered around himself and his family. But past that, my paternal side, my dad's side, I really didn't see much of our extended family talk about their ancestors much. They were all born and raised in the South, and my dad was born and raised in the South for the most part. They moved around a lot. But I think the most I heard about, especially recently with the movie Selma coming out, my dad lived in Alabama at the time, and he was young. He was, under 10 years old during the Selma marches, but he had an African American housekeeper and nanny, care provider. I'm a nanny myself, so I try to understand what he had because my brother and I didn't have anyone taking care of us growing up. We went to daycare, or, had grandparents help out. But he said that Penny basically raised him, and he learned a lot about what was going on between African Americans and Caucasians during the 60s and the 50s was through her and not really his parents. It wasn't talked about a whole lot, and I found that to be very interesting. And the way I ended up being raised by my parents, really, I never heard discrimination or biases, and I'm not naive enough to think that it wasn't there and that it wasn't occurring. I know it was, but I really don't have a lot of stories about it. I learned a lot about race through my mother, actually. Her best friend, whom I call my aunt, Aunt Lori, married an African-American man when I was around 5, and I believe that's when I asked her, why do we look different from others? But it was the first time it was someone really close to me who was different than me. And my mother explained it in a very caring way. She said, we all come from different places. You have Italian heritage, which is why I tan so dark, and she just explained it, and that we all come from different places. But we wound up in America, and Will, Lori's husband, just has a different heritage, but we're all the same on the inside. So from then on is when I really started understanding race the most I could, and it got much more confusing as I got older, as everyone can imagine. But that is really an example of the kind of household I grew up in, and I know that it got tough when my brother came out. My brother's homosexual, and he didn't tell the family till probably 3 years after he had come out to our nuclear family. And I was 14 when he told me, and he told my cousin when she was 17, and my uncle got very upset about it, and my grandfather got very upset with my brother for telling her, because he felt that it was just something you need to keep to yourself. And that has always affected me, and that was definitely a bias that I saw early on against the gay community. And I don't know if it's a generation gap, because things have just changed so much in such a short amount of time when it comes to the LGBT community. But that is something that's always stuck with me with differences. Also, my father is an alcoholic, which created some diversity for us that I'd see. My parents, lost a lot of friends when he decided to start going to AA. They stopped really drinking. It was a lot of years of just big change for them. And it created change for us. There were parents in the neighborhood who didn't want their kids coming over just because of the stigmatism around him being a recovering alcoholic. And I had friends who'd say, "Why? My mom told me your dad goes to meetings because he's sick." So those are little small things we dealt with. And I'll actually get into that with my 6 items. So to start my brown bag presentation, I have a picture of the United States of America. So this, my unique perspective of why this is important to me. One, because I was raised here. I'm proud to be an American. And that I think it is very cool how diverse this country is, how young it is, and while we've had our differences and our struggles, and we've come a long way and we have a lot longer to go. It's pretty cool that there's so many different ethnicities, there's so many different cultures. We're working on so many different religions and acceptance, and I really am proud to call this my home due to that fact. I think from an etic perspective, if someone saw me picking this as my item, they'd say something similar. Americans are known as being very proud, loud, all those things that Americans are known for, I guess, abroad, but that would be the etic perspective. I think they'd be pretty similar for this being one of my items. Next, actually, I have an AA chip. So it's a little dirty. It's from 5 years ago. So this was my dad's 15 years sobriety chip. He's now 20 years sober. But it is important to me because I was culturally raised around it. AA was very important to my family. My mom went to Al-Anon, and while my dad went to meetings, my grandparents watched us, or when we got older, my brother would watch me. And it just became a way of life and learning about it. And my dad started, his sponsor would come over, and then when he started sponsoring, his sponsorees would come over, and I would know them. And, I'd see them on the porch talking, and one of them would probably be smoking. And, it was a mini AA meeting, and I grew up, I've been to them with him. So it was a very important influence in my life, and it really has built up who I am as a person, and it's helped me find this career path. So that would be my imic perspective. The etic perspective, I think, would be very different with this item. I think outwardly it would look like I was maybe raised in a dysfunctional household, or my parents maybe told us too much. There's a lot of honesty in our household. That would be a positive etic perspective. That my parents could talk to us so much about it. But yeah, so that's number 2. Number 3 is another image. It's the gay equality image. So I know I gave kind of a little preview to this in my introduction, but this really has shaped me, who I am as a person. It provided me to understand diversity from a very close level. And I've gotten to see firsthand people being made fun of, the name calling, the issues that they go through. My brother wants to get married, and he still can't get married here. He has a serious relationship. So small things like that, it has truly helped me become the person I want to be, living around such diversity and being proud of it. So that would be my imic perspective. The etic perspective on that one is a little different. I think it might look like odd, possibly, that I'm not gay, and this would culturally help define me. I think that from the outside perspective, someone might believe that my brother and I have a very close relationship. That would be a positive. So I think as well the imic and etic perspectives on this item differ quite a bit as well. My next one, I think they definitely. So kind of a little odd, but it's a casserole dish. It's just a casserole dish. This culturally defines me because I grew up with both my parents together. I am very lucky to say that I've seen their marriage blossom even now. But when I was young and my brother and I were growing up, my dad really wasn't around much. He was working or trying to find work, or trying to find his path, while also going to AA meetings every night. And that really turned into his life, and I don't think he cared about work. But with that, my mother became super mom. She worked full time. She still had to drive my brother and I around. She allowed us to still have the hobbies we wanted to have, and yet she still had to make dinner every night. And the only thing she had time for was to throw things in a casserole and bake it. So in our home, we didn't grow up a lot around home-cooked meals besides casseroles. It was casseroles or potatoes from Wendy's, baked potatoes, or once a week we'd get KFC. And that's the immigrant perspective on that is how important it was to have such a strong female figure to look up to growing up. She was a very strong woman, and she was mom and dad, and she did everything for us while also putting food on the table. From the edit perspective, I'd say that there's some positives to this. It shows that we had home cooked meals. We had family dinners for the most part. We did have a strong-willed mother. The fact that she worked and made dinner is much more usual in this generation, but still. So that definitely shows my culture from the ethnic perspective. Next, we have a Colorado license plate. So I went to Colorado for school and stayed out there another year. So I lived in Colorado for 5 years. And this exemplifies my family culture in that we're so close, yet it's okay for us to travel and move. I never felt like I needed to stay driving distance from my family. I got a scholarship to Colorado, and it was important for me to go and travel and adventure, and my parents and my brother were all very supportive of this desire. So that is definitely a part of my culture, and that we have such a close family bond, but we all don't feel the need to have to stay together at all times. So that would be my immigrant perspective. From an etic perspective, it would show how important education is, because the license plate does signify why I went to Colorado. And that is true. Education was a big deal in my family, as well as the fact that I did move so far away from my family. Everyone is mostly in the South or the East Coast. So moving out west showed how okay it was for me to move. Lastly, I have a really old and hilarious family photo. I don't know why I picked an old one, but I thought it was kind of funny. Shows how far we've all come. But that also leads straight in from the Colorado. My nuclear family is so close, and from that immigrant perspective, that's really all it means to me, is that we're all so close, and we've all had our differences, and we've been through a lot together, but we've remained very close and made it through to this point, and we're still growing. From an ethnic perspective, I think it signified that maybe our extended family isn't quite as important. The fact I didn't pick one of my whole big, grandeur family, and then I stuck with just the 4 of us, and I'd say that is pretty accurate. I'm close to my extended family, but not to the means where I've seen other people be close with their extended families. It really is all about our 4, our niche. We hold very dear to each other. So those are my 6 items. Thanks for listening. How will my understanding of my own culture impact my effectiveness as a competent counselor? Well, growing up from many different cultures, a northern mother and a southern father and Italian heritage, and my brother who is homosexual, my dad who's been through the program, and my mom with such a strong female figure, I've seen a lot of diversity just in that, but I haven't seen a whole lot else. And I think that this class is helping me understand that a little bit better, because it does scare me a little bit. Someone who has a religious difference than me. Actually, it scares me more someone who is very religious, because I'm not, or someone who's really strong-willed in their opinions towards other people that are maybe negative and not open-hearted. So I think that is what I'm fearful of the most. But my own culture has definitely helped me to get to this point and listen to other people who are different than me, because I've had to so many times, and bite my tongue and not scream or yell or get in the way, but genuinely listen and try to understand how they came to those realizations. Do they feel that way because their parents told them, because their parents told them? I mean, those certain opinions are so deep-rooted, I don't think people even know how to get out of them. And I think that my background will help me understand that without letting my values go on to a client. So that's it for now. Thanks, everyone.